Now today let us create a simple app to see how we can restrict preference access to within activity, and how we can add values to any shared preference key, and then we can see how we can add our listener to see when values are added to shared preferences and when they are edited. So I'll just create a very simple file, a layout file. I'll say ref simple. And what I'll have in this is, I'll add 3 text fields to this. 1, 2, another 3. And I'll add 2 buttons to this. Button 1, button 2. So what button 1 will do, it will set the values of the preferences, and what button 2 will do, it will shift us to another activity where we'll show up the values of the set preferences. So I'll set up the text. I'll say save values, and here I'll say shift activity. So I have button 1, I have button 2, and I'll save this up. So I'll create another simple layout with a simple text. Pref simple activity, or I'll say pref simple second. So I'll just have a text field to show up the values of the preferences that we save, and I'll just say this as edit text 1. So we have 2 XML files set up, one where we'll set the values and then we'll shift to this, and here we'll demonstrate the values that we have set. So I'll have corresponding values for a class setup for activity. I'll say pref simple, and I'll also set up the method to be called on click, Android on click save val, and I'll say Android on click shift act. So I've set up both the methods. So here I'll extend this activity. So I'm not preparing any preference query in this case. We'll take up the values from the text field and we'll simply add them to the variables. So I'll import it activity. I'll set up on create, I'll set up the layout, set content to r dot layout dot pref simple. Just clean up the project. So this goes. So now I set up the method set val, I think save val. Save val with a view. Just import this. Now what I'll do here is I'll take up the shared preferences object from the method get preferences, and the mode I'll give as mode private. Now this mode private leads to access within the application, but as the method is get preferences, so this will generate shared preferences which are accessed only within this activity, and it will generate a file which will be of the same name as the class name. So I'll get an editor out of this. Shade preferences dot editor ed is equal to sp dot edit, and then I set up the values. So I'll get up my edit text et1, find view by it, r dot id dot edit text 1, and then I'll take up the second value. Second. So suppose in the first we enter the first name, and in the second we enter the second name. So I'll set up these values as sp dot ed dot put string. I'll say first name, and then put the value as et1 dot get text dot toString. So I've set up my first value as for f name and got the value from the first text field, and then I'll have my second. I'll say last name and set up the value from the second text field. So I set up both the values, and then I'll say ed dot commit. So I put on both the values. I have saved them to the shade preference file, and now I'll write the second method, and I'll just say a simple toast saying that we have set up the values. Values saved. So we're done with saving the values, and now I'll shift up the activity. Shift act. Here simply create an intent for the other class, that is I'll name it as pref simple second dot class. I've yet to make this, and then I'll start activity for this. So I'll save this, and I'll create a new class. I have to name this as pref simple second. So this is a bare simple class, simply extends activity, import this, add on create. Well, why I'll do it, we can even generate the activity right away and have all these methods. It just depends upon how we are getting used to it. On create, I'll set up the content view, which is r dot layout dot pref simple second, and then I'll get up the edit text, find view by id, r dot id dot edit text, and then I'll get up the preferences object. Now I'll again obtain the same way. Shared preferences sp is equal to get preferences, mode is private, and then I can get up the values. I can straight away say et dot set text. While just we have two values, I can just simply get one value and put it into the text field. I'll say sp dot get string, and the key was first name, f name, and default I'll say no value got. So this is how we'll get this working. We obtain a shared preference based on get preferences method, and then whatever value we get f name from this object, we'll put it into the edit text. So this finishes both the activities. We have to enter these into the preference file. We have pref simple as the main, pref simple, and here we have pref simple second. So this gets us going. So I'll just run this app and see how this works. So just unlock the emulator. So there it goes. So I'll just put down my name as a first name, second name, and then I'll save the values. So we get values saved. Now let us see what file it has generated to save these values. I go to DDMS, I'll go to the file explorer, then data, again data, and then I search for my package which is com.example.pref, and I have a folder called shared prefs, and there you have the file which is pref simple. Now pref simple is the name of my class. So when I don't give a name and I use get preferences, it makes a preference file which is the same name as that of the class. So we'll go back, I'll just see how we can move to the other activity. Now I'll shift the activity and we get no value got. This is because the values that we have saved through get preferences, they are to be used within the same activity. They can't be shared with any other activities. Now in case I want to share this with any other activity, what I'll do is, instead of creating get preferences, I'll say get shared preferences, and as I know that the name of the class was pref simple, I can give the name here, and now I'll again try to get the same values. I'll again run this for you. Yeah. So instead of the old value, I'll give some new value. I'll say new Tejinder, and then same last name. We save the values. I shift the activity. Now as you can see, we have got the values that we have set. So in order to share values between activities, we need to use the method get shared preference, and in case we have some values which are restricted to activity, that can only be done through get preferences. Get preferences gets you the XML file that is as per the name of the class, and through get shared preferences we can use any name to keep for the XML file that is used by the shared preferences. So we'll just see it. We have got a shared preferences object, we have set the preferences, and in case from some other activity we use get preferences, then we cannot get the values of the preferences from the file. In case we use get shared preferences, then we can get the values in case we know the name of the class which had set the values. So now we'll see how we can track when the system saves the values in the shared preference file. So what I'll do is I'll attach a listener, say implements on shared preference change listener, and I'll implement the method. Okay, and I'll attach this to this shared preference object, register on shared preference listener. So I've registered the shared preference change listener to the shared preferences object that we have used to set the value, to store the values, and I'll get the third edit text working, or I can do it within this method itself. Find view by id, r.id.edit text 3, and now this gives me the shared preference object, which is this sp. This is passed to this method, and then this is the key which changes. So in case I make a change to f name, I get f name here. In case I make a change to l name, I'll get the key l name here. So because this will be called for every change in value, I can use a string builder to store what values it is changing. So I'll append append key, and then I'll add a comma to it, and then I'll set et dot set text sp dot toString. So in case we change two keys, then this will set the values, and let us again set it to blank after we then we'll not be having the output. So let us just see the output here first. So we'll run this app. Ref. Now set two values, say, and then I'll save. Oh, this is the last key that it is. Just go through. Just add another. There's a change to last name, that it shows last name. Now make a change to first name. So it adds first name. So this is how we can track how values to the shared preferences are changing. And whenever we make any change to a value that is stored in a shared preference object, this sp, this listener gets called, and this calls this method on shared preference changed. It passes this object along with the key that has changed, either fname or lname, and that will show up in the text box. Even we can show up the value of that key that has changed. Either instead of appending this, what I can do is I can set text new value is, I need to get this object, I'll name it as shared. I'll say shared dot get string, which is key, and default value I'll say nothing. this. So what I am doing is whatever value changes, I am printing this value to the third text field. So I'll just again run this. So the new value for the last key that was changed was the L name, last name. Either first we change the first name, then we change the last name. So the last time this method got called on shared change was for last name, and that is what value we are getting. If I change the first name, so we get the value for the first name. So this is how we can implement a listener for any change in the shared preferences value and track that.